I always tell people if they're having like a financially stable, boring moment, that is the time where you set up, like you start throwing money into those sinking funds. You start setting up so that future Ndamukong, future Berna is like, oh, what during that like down, chill moment, I still took care of myself. And it's a massive sort of like safe feeling.
No Free Lunch is presented by Piro. The information provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified financial and or legal professionals before making any legal or financial decisions or investments. I'm Ndamukong Suh, and welcome to No Free Lunch, where we talk to experts and athletes about how the most successful people in sports manage their money and grow their wealth. Big Dog Danny, what we got going on today?
You know, it's officially December. It's the 11th or 12th hour, I guess, of the year. 2026 is pretty much here. I feel like if you haven't already been planning for 2026, I feel like you're a little bit behind. How's your planning going for the next year?
Man, my planning is full throttle. I think I've already got myself booked out through the end of March with meetings, events, a handful of different things I want to accomplish in 26.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so many different things that I'm already out until April and close to May, which is insane that I know my schedule that early in the year. But it's crazy. Used to be in sports, like Everything is right here, right now, and you don't look past the next week. But in the real world, you got to look ahead and understand where you want to go and build towards that. Yeah.
Months, quarters move by fast. For me, I think big thing for me is investing in experiences as well. Like get to, we've been in London, we've been all over the United States, and you're moving around. But for me, on top of all the stuff with the show, with my own career stuff, is like experiences and being a part of culture. So I'm excited. We have Berna coming back, Berna Anat, who's our financial expert, all things budgeting, and we're going to talk about budgeting for 2026 goals. So I'm going to need to take some tips from yourself and Berna about 2026.
Yeah, man. Let's jump right into it right here at No Free Lunch, boss. Let's get this going. Berna, welcome back to No Free Lunch. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being here. I'm psyched.
Yes. So talking about previously being your own CFO and understanding what life looks like from the financial side of things, I want to understand, like, at least for me, I've already been planning for 2026. I know a lot of things that are on my calendar, especially January, February, even as far as up towards the end of March, speaking engagements, all these different particular pieces. But also from a financial perspective, I'm pre-planning and understanding like where I'm allocating certain dollars because I'm remodeling a house and I'm doing these different pieces, understanding my Christmas gifts. I'm also budgeting a trip for my wife and kids for birthdays that are in March. Yes. So like, how do you look at the overall financial goals in preparing for 2026? Because 2025 is pretty much over.
Oh yeah. 2025 is going to be over in about 10 minutes. We know that from especially Thanksgiving coming up, it just like you blink and it's gone. And it's interesting because I think everybody kind of closes their eyes from like September to December and then opens them in January. And you're just like, who did that? Who did this to me? You're looking at your finances and you're like, what goblin came in here and ruined everything? And so if you can find a moment while you're listening to this, no matter when you're listening to this, it's so important to find a moment and just try to take a look at the next year. And if the next year is too much, it's too overwhelming, I like to, of course, look at things in quarters. And so Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, it's great to sort of get an idea of what are the big financial moments happening, like it sounds like you did for 2026 already. What are the moments where there are big trips happening, big financial kind of dive moments? Are you planning for any kind of big medical expenses? Are you planning for other people's big medical expenses? I would just sketch out the year if you can. If that's too overwhelming, use a half or use a quarter and sketch out the sort of big financial milestones. You could write that down on a poster, but it's good to sort of get an idea of the overall story.
So I 100% agree with that and understanding your story and your vision of where you want to be. But it'd be remiss for me, at least from a tax perspective, understanding the tax year ends in December 31st of whatever year that is.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some pre-planning and some things that people should be looking at from a financial perspective to make sure that they're sound and they're prepared to go into 2026 from a tax perspective? Because we're doing our 2025 taxes in the year of 26 of that April.
Yes.
They need to be quote unquote solidified, unless you're a person like me who has a crazy amount of K1s that gets kicked into October from that standpoint.
Okay. Thank you for the PTSD, because it's November, and October was so rough wrapping up the taxes that I had deferred with my accountant. And I would say, since I'm not a tax professional, I will always say this is a great time to hit up your CPA, your tax professional. They are just hobbling out of the second wave of tax season. So it's a good time to catch them actually and be like, hey, what do I need to know? What do I need to wrap up since the fiscal year wraps up December 31st? There could be some things that you need to wrap up from. Maybe you're rolling over a 401k. Maybe you're trying to figure out what's the last contributions I should be making to my investments. All that, I like to say, and I'll mention this later in the podcast too, but my co-founder and I have a phrase that we live by, which is never do math alone. Never, ever do math alone. It's dangerous. No lifeguard on duty. And so always link up with a tax professional that knows your financial situation and just straight up ask them, what do I need to know to prepare going into 2026? And maybe you're telling them the same things that you would ask yourself if you're doing your own sort of self-audit. Here's what's happening next year. Here are some of my overall goals. Here's maybe what I'm trying to hit. Here's what I'm trying to protect. Here's what changed in my life in 2025. Here's what I think might change in 2026. Tax professional, what should I do? What should I lock down before all of this fiscal calendar ends? Because you don't want to get caught needing to do catch up next year for sure.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because I'm going through it because I actually have taxes I have to deal with overseas and understanding the rebates and all those processes, and their tax year is not lined up with my tax year here in the States. And so Miss Lonnie, who is a godsend from my perspective, who's my accountant, she's been helping me for close to over a decade from that standpoint. She knows where everything sits and how I need to operate and how I need to do certain things. So we almost, I would say on a monthly basis, if not for sure a quarterly basis, are on the phone talking about the stuff. But I actually had a call this morning with her about some stuff. So it is very key.
I love that. It's what I really wish for everyone in 2026 is to, if you haven't already, start to get your financial Avengers team around you. I think, again, like I say, never do math alone. And I really don't think you should do finances alone either, especially when you're getting to a point like yourself, Ndamukong, you have multiple businesses, you're running a podcast, you're taking care of your family. That is not something that you should take on financially by yourself. There are tax implications. There are investing things you got to take a look at. A lot of the times, I think we think that we need to figure this all out for ourselves, but you should have a suite of folks to support you. And that's part of my 2026 goals too, is to really lock down some financial besties, really lock in my financial Avengers so that I'm never doing math alone, because they're professionals for a reason, and they know things like overseas tax rebates for a reason. You don't have to hold that in your head. Do not let ChatGPT make you think that you can figure that out yourself. No. The pros are paid for a reason.
Yeah, you're spot on when it comes to my an Avengers team, because I think of, again, I mentioned Miss Lonnie. I also mentioned Mr. Matt and Mr. Todd. Those folks are people that are in my camp that have been with me for over a decade and have seen the quote unquote super basic days of all right, you got your Nike deal, you've got this deal, you've got this. So those are 1099s, and you got your W-2 income that's coming from the NFL. And it's pretty straightforward and simple. Although NFL becomes difficult because you got to, every single state that you're in, you got to file in and do all those different things. And there's reciprocal states that you work with, especially when I played in Detroit, Illinois and Wisconsin. And I think there was one other, it might be Minnesota, that they're all reciprocal states of the state of Michigan. So there's things that people don't understand and learn from that standpoint. But I mean, we were just buying a rental property the other day with me and my wife, and I tapped into Mr. Matt. Bro, I need you to, one, I don't have the time and energy, but I want to find, can you put a spreadsheet together for me of which bank I should be going with? Whether it's Wells, whether it's this other group or JP Morgan or whoever it is, who's going to give me the best rate based on these different variables. And let's also have this conversation with my wife, and you guys go have one-on-one conversations. I want to have a one-on-one conversation with you, and then let's put it all together and make a decision from that perspective. And so those are like those things of being able to lean on people who are experts in their space. And Matt is a wizard with math. Like I love his spreadsheets, and they're so simple, but very complicated at the same time too.
Yeah. And that's what they're there for, right? The Matt, for me, it's Alan, my tax guy in SF. You have been my godsend for a decade. I always say it's like your hairdresser and your tax person that knows way too much about you. And like, you need to lock them down before death, like, because they know too much. But I want it to be that way, right? Like you just said, you are especially as a business owner, a multi-hyphenate, you don't have the time to be holding all that in your head. And so it's important to surround yourself with that. Now, if you are first gen like ourselves, and maybe you don't have any kind of model of, parents who grew up with a financial team, or you're like, what do you even mean financial team? Just starting with someone who does your taxes, an accountant, and also someone who is a financial planner for you to see the whole picture is so important. Because if we didn't have the Matts and the Allens and the everybody around, we're doing finances by ourselves, which is it's a dangerous place to be. And I really see money as something that should be a means for access to other things for you: joy, fun, family. If finance is the access to joy, like if the finance is the joy, love that for you. But for many of us, you want to be able to set up your financial team and your financial life so that you have to basically think and do as little as possible, lock into people who know your goals so you can be free to do everything else that money opens up for you. That's my dream.
Yeah. No, and 100%. And that's where I think when it comes to personal and business goals, like how do they differ, or are they similar from that perspective? And I guess I want to ask you that question. Like, how are your personal and business goals either collectively one and the same, or are they different?
Oh, that's a great question. See, I'm a freak, and I do like finances as a hobby and as like a vibe workflow in my life. And as a creative, like it all just comes together. And so I will say though, there's a little bit of separation. So for my work goals, I do still see my work as a financial creator as the thing that feeds the rest of my life. For example, a work goal that I have, and really is sort of like a life goal as well, is to finally link up with my like one true financial planner. I have dabbled so much with other financial planners. I've talked to a ton in my career, of course, but it's almost like being single and ratchet. And now I'm looking to like settle down and find the one. Like I'm looking for the one now. But when I find that financial planner, that is a person I'm going to be giving my work goals and my personal goals to. And so it all kind of meshes together, right? And even within that, though, in terms of, for example, my savings and investing goals, I have investing goals and savings goals in terms of work. Maybe there's certain equipment I'm wanting to buy next year. There's certain like things I'm trying to build up to. On the personal side, for example, I want my work life to feed into something really specific next year. A personal goal of mine is to start, I'm calling it like a niece scholarship. Okay. What I want to do is I have 4 nieces, and I want to establish every year that they get a certain amount of money from me, from Auntie Berna. And it's almost like it's like a educational scholarship in that they know they're going to get this money from me every year. And we're going to sit down and figure out what they're going to do with that money. And it needs to do with like a goal that they want to accomplish. We're not just going to go out and buy like a random thing. This money has to go towards like classes or training or like equipment towards like a creative goal that you have. That is a financial goal I want to set up. Like I want my work life to feed into my personal life. And so for me, it's very all together.
At T. Rowe Price, their experience helps them see investment potential differently. Instead of quick answers, they know that what really leads to confident investing is true curiosity, which is why they ask smart questions, just like us. Like how healthcare innovation creates a healthier world, or how will AI be a part of a new tomorrow? Great questions for a deep dive. At T. Rowe Price, their curiosity runs deep so you can invest more confidently. Better questions, better outcomes. T. Rowe Price. Learn more at troprice.com/curiosity. Something I want to do for my boys as they get older is once they're kind of, I don't know exactly when that right age will be, but I want them to say, hey, here is, let's just say $10,000. And I need you to invest. I want you to invest this money. And the best way that you do that is eventually the way you get your next $10,000 is making sure you hit your goals of what you invested in, what you projected that to be. Or you may miss out on the next month because you failed at that piece. Then we reset it and go from that. Because I think that's when you start to put it in practice for them at a young age, for them to start to understand and look at these different things versus they get a crash course when they're adults, which that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. And that's how the rest of us learn, unfortunately, is like, what I love about that is that you're setting them up with, it's not necessarily play money. Obviously, this is going to be stuff that's really getting invested for themselves, but you're giving them an environment to try and to learn. Whereas the rest of us, we're trying and learning in our high stakes years. We are already an adult and there's already people that depend on you and there's already rent due. And so it's really wonderful that you're giving them like, it's like a sparring ring. You know, you're like letting them kind of take their punches from investing early on. And if more of us had that, less of us would be panicking adults. So it's a really beautiful thing. I know as you're saying this, I'm like, all right, maybe I should also set up like actual investment money for my nieces as well. I'm like, the creative auntie side is like, do you want to do gymnastics classes, but it's hard to afford because you have a part-time job? Auntie's going to take you to gymnastics classes. But you know, it's a different kind of investment.
Yeah, but I also look at it as like, I'm going to put money away for your college anyways. Although my ultimate goal is for you to get a scholarship academically first and foremost, and then from a sports perspective, AKA basketball. But God forbid something of that doesn't happen, then you have been investing, let's just say from 10 years old. So you've had, or 8 years old, you have a 10-year run to help yourself get to whatever college you want to. And you potentially have the money to be able to do that. And it all, lo and behold, in the back, you don't even know that you've already got that money allocated away from that standpoint, which they technically do. So, but that's kind of how I'm thinking of it from that standpoint. So that kind of leads me to another question for you. Have you set financial goals already for 2026? And if so, what was that process like? Or if not, how are you going to start that process? Because I know you're going to set financial goals without question.
Oh yes, I'm setting financial goals, and I'm glad you actually talked about at the top of our conversation, looking at the year and figuring out where sort of your milestones are hitting, like where you're earning, where you have to spend. Next year for me, I'm at that era in my life where it's like a second wave of all my friends getting married. We got 4 weddings next year. I'm in a wedding party of 3 of them. And because we're all in like a different echelon of earning in our lives, we're no longer in our broke 20s, everybody's trying to go overseas for these weddings. And so it's like we have, it's like, it's joyful, it's painful, it's fun, it's stressful.
I think that's a new wave of things. So they ain't got to pay for everything. And then you're also weeding out people who don't want to come. But there's certain people that are forced to come.
Yeah.
And dang, I got to spend $4,000, $5,000 to get overseas round trip.
Yes, it's expensive to have close relationships. It turns out they say to like, tend to your garden of friendships. And hello, you need money to tend to that garden sometimes. It's joyful. But I'm seeing next year as like almost every quarter, there's some sort of big trip that we're saving for. And so every quarter and every wedding is its own savings goal. And the way that I set up savings goals, and I have set up savings goals for a long time, is there are a couple steps to this process. The first thing I do is I name my goal, I define it, right? And I dig into the why I want that goal. You know me, I'm very emotions first. Money's very emotions first for me. So I think of, how will it feel to achieve it? What is it going to look like? How will I celebrate when I get to that number? How will I celebrate milestones along the way? I have been known to take a screenshot of my bank account and Photoshop it to the number that I want it to look like, and then put that picture somewhere all the time. It's almost like cheating my brain into like a vision board. So if there's $0 in that bank account, I will Photoshop it to look like $5,000 and then just like keep that somewhere that I can always see it. It's silly, but it really, really works for me in terms of savings goals. And then, of course, the second step is I have to figure out the math behind it, but I never do it alone. I might employ bots. I really love savings and investings calculators from places like NerdWallet or The Balance. Of course, if you have a financial advisor, you can be like, help me. Here's the numbers. You do the math, please. I'm in my Pinterest board of like Santorini bikinis. You do the math. But you don't need to reinvent the wheel there in terms of savings calculators. either you're approaching it like, how much do I need to contribute to this goal every month to get to a certain place in time? Like you have a milestone and a date already in mind, and you're trying to figure out how much money it takes to get to that place. Or you're thinking, I have this much money every month to contribute. How long will it realistically take me to achieve it? Either way, that math can be done in these savings calculators. And that's how you get your like straight up marching orders, X amount a month in this account by this time, boom. And then the very last thing that I think a lot of people forget, but is so, so critical for me, is accountability. Again, never do math alone. That could look like telling a financial advisor that you have a goal and they help you track. That could look like texting your most like Virgo ass intense stick up the butt friend and being like, hey, I'm doing this thing and I know you're really good at keeping me on track. Can you just check in with me mid Q1? Can I text you every time we do a savings deposit? Can you shame me if we meet up for brunch and I tell you that I actually haven't met my goal that month? The accountability is important for me, but as also a neurospicy girl, I need structure and it needs to be fun or else I just will avoid it like the plague. So that's all those three things are super important to me: the vision, the math, and the accountability goal.
And I think that's important. And it's something that's always going to be on a consistent basis to get you where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But let me ask you a question of throwing a wrench into all of that planning and processing.
Yes.
How do you deal with unexpected items? E.g., you mentioned medical bills, just expenses that if you're renting or you have a home, you got to fix something, whatever it may be, and then find yourself getting back on track from that perspective as well.
Yes. Okay. Life always lifes. That is true.
Yeah.
The thing that I try to get folks prepared for is making savings funds and sinking funds for lifing. So we've lived enough years to understand what lifing looks like, right? Maybe it's unexpected medical expenses. Maybe if you own a car, it's unexpected car things, home things. Ideally, you would set up sinking funds or essentially separate savings accounts to prepare for those unexpected things. So you might have within a savings account or within your savings plan, a sinking fund for car things going wrong. Maybe you look at a year or an average year and you're like, what could go wrong with the car? Save up a certain amount. Maybe it's like $1,000, $3,000. You have a car sinking fund. You might have a home sinking fund for when a raccoon gets in a pipe and lays eggs and now you got a raccoon family eating your walls. What would that cost in a year? What are the average amount? Like, what's the amount of money you would want in there to take care of one or two house emergencies in a year? That's your house sinking fund. Maybe you have a sinking fund for other things that happen in your life. Overall, the like emergency fund umbrella with all those sinking funds underneath are so important because you can prepare financially for when life lifes. I personally have my 6-month emergency savings fund. I have a like house and car sinking fund so that when life lifes, I can dip into that money and not get off track with my like fun ongoing goals. If life catches me off guard and I'm not off track, it's honestly just a matter of ruthless prioritization because you can't pull money out of your butt. And a lot of the times pulling money out of your butt in an emergency can land you in really much more intense, like high interest consumer debt, like having to get a personal loan or putting it on a credit card. My priority is always trying to either avoid or get rid of high interest consumer debt first, like credit cards or personal loans. And so if I have to prioritize that, then sometimes a savings goal, a trip has to take a back seat. Or I have to get really creative with my side hustle brain. Like suddenly this $3,000 medical expense has popped up. It's high interest. I want to get rid of it. How can I figure out some extra project or something to do that gets me exactly to that number right away? How do I prioritize that and get it out of the way? That's like entrepreneurship, creative brain. But it really is when life lifes, you just have to ruthlessly prioritize. But ideally, you don't have to get to that place if you already have your sinking funds set. I always tell people if they're having like a financially stable, boring moment, that is the time where you set up, like you start throwing money into those sinking funds. You start setting up so that future Ndamukong, future Berna is like, oh, what during that like down, chill moment, I still took care of myself. And it's a massive sort of like safe feeling.
Yeah, super, super smart from that perspective. I mean, this has been a great conversation, but I got one more for you. And I'm curious to what financial goals did you hit that you set for 2025?
Okay, yes. Super honest time. Influencer life is expensivo and very,
Okay.
very, very roller coastery.
Yep.
And in 2024, I did rack up a decent amount of credit card debt, just trying to like figure it out and make ends meet, which is hard to do and hard to talk about because, of course, you're like preaching about finances while sitting on your own high consumer debt. But I knew that I had to prioritize getting rid of that. So part of that was getting a big girl job and getting consistent income, which has been incredibly creatively fruitful and financially fruitful. And so big goal this year is paying down a whole bunch of that credit card debt, getting it to a really, really manageable place. And also that job is filling up my 401k and my Roth IRA. And so Stability was the big goal of 2025 for me, and I got there. What about you?
Oh, well, first and foremost, congratulations.
Thank
But
you.
for myself, my financial goals, one of them was just living in a space in life where, yes, I have great jobs that I work tirelessly with. My wife does an amazing job of keeping our budget and family stuff in order, and then obviously the job she has and things that we do together. But I really wanted to cut down on my amount of debt that I had and debt to income ratio, especially for things that I didn't need and homes that I didn't need. So that was a big thing for me, was like reducing that heavily because I just don't need it. And just because you can have it doesn't mean that you need it. And that was something big for me. And I have the plan that I put together. This was January, February of 25. I've retired close to about $10 million of debt. So
amazing.
Yeah.
High
So
fives to
really
us.
happy about that.
Virtual high fives to us for doing that.
Yeah.
That's
But so yeah, and really the big thing for me is that my dad early on in my life was like, be careful with debt and all these different particular things. And I was like, yeah, like, so that's why early on in my career, all I did was buy everything in cash and whatnot. But then I said, I don't necessarily need to do that. But then I wouldn't say I over-index, but I say I got close to over-indexing on the debt side of things. And so that's where 2025 was like a hammer year. I am reducing debt that I don't need to have.
Yep.
And pulling all that back. So very proud of that. And especially my wife, she helped a lot in that space, especially talking through it, which I don't always tell her. So she'll have to listen to the podcast to hear it. My thank you.
Oh, that's sweet. I hope you tell her eventually, but also major congratulations to that. Debt is really, I love the idea that you're like, I swung the pendulum this way because dad taught me and this way because I had access to money. And now I'm finding the middle. Because debt is something that, as you know, as a business person, you can absolutely leverage to a healthy degree. So we're finding it. We're finding that middle.
Well, awesome, Berna. This has been an amazing conversation on No Free Lunch. I look forward to another one here in the new year or many more. So we will talk here soon.
Thank you so much.
It's time for the Confidently Curious question, where we ask questions that are one step ahead. Sponsored by T. Price, where they believe that asking better questions can lead to better outcomes. So my Confidently Curious question of the day is, what is an instruction to buy or sell a security immediately at the best available price, prioritizing speed and execution over a specific price? A, sale order. B, market order. C, discount call. The answer is B, market order. The biggest advantage is that it guarantees that the order will be executed quickly. The order type is suitable for traders who want to enter or exit a position quickly and are not concerned with achieving an exact price point. That's our Confidently Curious question for the week. Thanks to our sponsor, T. Rowe Price, for modeling the power of better questions. T. Rowe Price proudly sponsors No Free Lunch. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the podcast participants and do not necessarily reflect those of T. Rowe Price. Their sponsorship supports the platform and does not imply endorsement of specific content or perspectives. What a great conversation with Berna. I think my biggest takeaway is understanding ultimately life always throws curveballs at you, but if you plan accordingly and set up yourself to deal with those curveballs, they won't be as bad as they could be. And I mean, that's where a lot of people become very, very emotional and very, very tough times, and they can't get themselves through that. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe to No Free Lunch on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, or I'm coming to find you, especially in the new year.